Hey everyone, this is James from Italian Poliziotteschi and Gialli Reviews. Today going to be talking about Murder-Rock, Dancing Death, 1984 Giallo, done by none other than Lucio Fulci. So quick synopsis here before I talk about whether you should watch this film or not. We'll be spoiling this film, so here's the synopsis. The world of dance can be brutal. The rehearsals are grueling, the competition is fierce. At the Arts for a Living Center in New York City, the best of the best are dying for a part in a major production. But only a select few will be chosen. The selection process seems to be at the hands of a mysterious killer who pierces women's bare breasts with a hat pin, puncturing their hearts. Ambition and jealousy appear to be the motive, which makes everybody a suspect. Great synopsis. I think it makes the film sound, it hypes the film up properly. And I think it's probably the good aspects of the film here. I think you should watch this film, especially if you're watching this channel, because this channel is far from a very popular channel. It means you're probably a little bit of a Italian genre freak if you're watching this. So I would definitely recommend anyone that's watching this channel check this film out. I think this film is not quite the kind of genre deconstruction that something like Tenebrae is from the 1980s, or quite as ambitiously sleazy with a lot of subtext like The New York Ripper is. But it is a fairly boilerplate giallo from 1984, directed with a ton of style and flourishes by none other than Fulci. And I think he really is operating at a very high level here. I think it's mostly the plot and the cast that do kind of de-elevate this film down a little bit from being kind of an all-time classic for Fulci. But nonetheless, I think it's a very solid, good, enjoyable film if you know kind of what you're in for. So something along the lines of the Vanzina brothers doing Nothing Underneath or Too Beautiful to Die. Let's see, what else is there in this era? Stage Fright is another good one. I'd say Stage Fright's a bit better than this. But if you want something that's like you don't need to think too hard about and is just kind of pure comfort food for an Italian genre fan, and you are a giallo freak like I am, and just want to kind of like watch something to rewatch it, then this film is definitely pretty solid. This is one that, even though I'm not going to give it the highest absolute rating, I like it, and it's extremely rewatchable, partly just because of all the kind of directorial flourishes, and partly because like the dance floor aspects of it are just frankly kind of fun. So, let's get into the talking points. So one thing the synopsis did mention is kind of the systemic criticism for dance. I think that is sort of a theme that goes through here. I don't think it necessarily all lands. I don't think it's enough of a theme that it really kind of hammers it home in people's heads. But the idea that there's like kind of this limited amount of spots between artists and sort of incentivizes kind of a dog-eat-dog world where people are fighting against each other, competing against each other, and it can go very, very far. In this scenario, Murder-Rock, there are 3 spots, and so someone is killing the other dancers, so it obviously creates an automatic motive for just about everyone that is wanting to get one of those 3 different spots. So, I'm hesitant to talk too much about this because I do think it's not quite enough in the film to make it like a something that you can say is kind of the core thesis of the film, but it is there, and I do think it's something that is worth thinking about a little bit. Like if you think about this film, a lot of artists like to make film about art, so it's like The Brutalist. It's like the director of that film's like, oh yeah, this is about being a filmmaker. You could make the same case for Murder-Rock, Dancing Death, that this is kind of about like kind of the ambition and what you have to do in order to kind of make it in this world where, not everyone can direct a movie, but a lot of people absolutely want to direct a film. Another thing that I think really does work in this film too is just bringing Fulci back to New York City. Usually one of the reasons I love these Italian genre films is the European setting. I love it when you kind of have these kind of dark gothic looks like you're getting from like someone like Argento, or just rolling through the streets in the Poliziotteschi's. Nonetheless, I think New York's a great canvas for him. I think he does a great job here. It's interesting that a lot of Fulci's best, kind of most favorite films are actually set in the U.S., We're talking about The Gates of Hell trilogy as well as New York Ripper. I think Fulci really, New York of the 80s, it gives him a great canvas, and he just goes to town with different angles and lighting. It's shot really, really well. I really love the way this looks. New York Ripper is also a very handsomely beautiful film, and I think that's one of those things where the sleaze overshadows it. It feels like he actually has resources here. I'm also a fan of some of the dialogue that the screenwriters that Fulci was working with at the time here come up with. My favorite line here is, "He's not a psycho, he's an asshole," with the kind of grizzled detective talking about some of the suspects. I think those are kind of fun and definitely kind of, I think it might have been Zacchetti or Menino, one of those guys comes up with it. Giuseppe Pinori was the cinematographer here, and so everything just strobes here. The colors pop. The lighting looks great. I watched the Blu-ray from Scorpion, and it's very, very dreamlike. So, in rewatching some Giallos during this batch, two of them I did watch were this one, as well as Don't Torture Duckling. And you couldn't think of kind of more different settings where you have Duckling that's set in kind of rural Italy, and it's... and the very dreamlike qualities that Fulci would infuse here. I think it just kind of shows you at what different parts of their career they were at, what were the current trends in like Italian genre cinema, the Filone at the time. And this film, very, very leery and potentially sleazy. And I think a lot of whether you find this film sleazy or not depends on your baseline and your expectations. I think if you're in a vacuum and you're just watching a lot of American films and then you watch this film, you're like, oh, it's European, the breasts are coming out, there's a hairpin piercing through. You'd be like, okay, yeah, this is pretty like Euro sleazy. That being said, if you come from the opposite lens and you're like, oh, I'm just walking through Fulci's filmography, I just watched New York Ripper, great, this is another Giallo set in New York, let's see what you got, Lucio. And then he cuts away in the majority of the other murder scenes. Of course, we get a couple bare breasts shown, things like that. But it's not his most sleazy effort. So I guess in the end, it has a little bit of sleaze. It has a small amount of gore. But this is not Fulci. This is not maximalist Fulci. A couple other things in the film. He does actually have a solid cast of males here, of faces like Claudio Castanelli and Ray Lovelock. That being said, it is a little unfortunate those guys get a little bit sidelined here. Olga Karladas is just okay as the lead, and I think that the cast is kind of one thing that does let it down a bit. I think, when I asked AI and just the internet what the most conventional Fulci Giallo was, this was not the one that was mentioned. It was usually Don't Torture Duckling, an answer I find to be a little bit baffling. For me, at least, I think this is his most conventional Giallo. This is the same kind of framing that we have all the way going back to Blood and Black Lace, where we have a bunch of models in living in a house and doing modeling and just start getting picked off. To me, at least, this is kind of like a direct descendant from that, where we have this dance academy there. The appeal of this film is all the ways that it's able to create it and make it come together, which is also in many ways kind of the appeals of the Mario Bava film, the way that colors pop, style, the way things are framed, and it's the actual filmmaking. And for me, at least, I feel the same about Murder-Rock. I don't think, obviously, it does not reach the heights of something like Blood and Black Lace, but nonetheless, it is quite enjoyable if you are a fan of kind of just this boilerplate Giallo construction that we have here, just transposed to a different era. Surely by putting it in like an 80s dance era, you're going to just have different textures and different stuff going on here, and then having someone like Fulci direct it, who just, knows how to direct a film at this point. He is like super veteran director. I think he's probably either in his 60s or 50s here, so deep into his career, kind of coming off of his big hot stretch. I think it's quite wonderful. Last thing I want to mention too, because it's kind of a key component to the film, is the Keith Emerson score. This is one that you're going to run across very mixed opinions on it. And I mostly like it, actually. Clearly kind of trying to be kind of like this very of the era, flash dance sort of thing. I heard that one of the alternate titles for Murder-Rock is actually Slash Dance, which is kind of funny. And I mostly like the score. I think it starts out a little bit stronger and then kind of weakens as the film goes on. I wish almost that the dance horror aspects would continue to play a significant part, where we'd have kind of music numbers as the film went on. Nonetheless, that's not really the case in how it is constructed. But I still mostly like the score. And if we're just talking about this as a very casual, kind of rewatchable film, it doesn't need to be perfect at all its parts. In fact, I think I tend to like the first hour of this a little bit more. Whenever there's kind of a suspense tension scene or an excuse for Fulci to just amp up the expressionistic lighting or style, I think that's when this film shines at its most. most. Who won the film? I'm going to give it to Lucio Fulci. Again, I think the strengths of this film. I think if you have someone crappy directing this, like, I don't know, someone more just ordinary, even like Umberto Lenzi, I think it's a much, much worse film. I think Fulci is the thing that makes this film to be at least a pretty decent one. Gonna give this a 7 out of 10, but again, this is one that I do not mind rewatching at all. I've seen this film 3 times, and it's a 7 out of 10. That's not a huge, super high rating from me. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Cheers.